Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Fairy Wind TOGETIC, a newly buffed Pokemon that helped me climb over 100 ELO and get close to veteran rank. TOGETIC previously was stuck with hidden power, so Fairy Wind is a massive upgrade. The charge moves do still leave a bit to be desired, with Ancient Power and Dazzling Gleam, but TOGETIC does prove to be an interesting Great League core breaker. I ran a pretty standard team. It's the typical Swampert Frostlass Noctowl team, but instead of Noctowl, I'm running TOGETIC. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Fairy Wind TOGETIC in action in the Great League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a very neutral lead Swampert into Charmalola Ninetales. I'm going to stay in this matchup to start and go for the Hydro Cannon. This is non-lethal, but it will deal massive chip damage, so opponent will commit the shield. Now I can save switch into Frostlass. The goal of the Frostlass save switch is to try and bait out any steel types lurking in the back, as TOGETIC has no coverage moves against steel types. My opponent is going to land the Psyshock, and now in comes Azumarill. Azumarill will be able to soak that Shadow Ball damage quite well, and my opponent probably just going to go for the no shield and the full farm down here, as XL Azu will be able to absorb both Shadow Balls and leave with quite a lot of energy here. Azu does get the full farm down. I still have a very healthy Swampert, so I'm going to send in the Swampert here. I will commit the shield in case it's a Hydro Pump. It does only end up being the Ice Beam. I'm looking for the farm down. I don't quite get there, but this is only going to be an Ice Beam, so I will be able to tank it. Now I get the farm down, I leave with a ton of energy, and I'm just earthquaking whatever comes in, and it's a Medicham, and TOGETIC is about to sweep the end game. In comes TOGETIC, opponent sends in the Ninetales, but Ninetales takes super effective damage from Ancient Power. I'm firing off the Ancient Power, opponent will commit the shield, TOGETIC continuing to farm, opponent returns fire with the Weather Ball. This will grab my final shield. My goal is I want to try and overfarm in this matchup because I want to leave with energy so I can outpace the Medicham. Firing off the Ancient Power here, Ancient Power is going to get them low, TOGETIC gets the farm down. In comes the Medicham into a loaded Dazzling Gleam. TOGETIC takes out the Medicham, and that is a good game. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Swampert into Shadow Dragonair. I'm going to save switch into Frostlass, even though Frostlass also has a losing matchup here. My opponent farms up energy. They look to catch an Avalanche onto Lantern, but I'm able to hold on to my energy and make it to the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball connects onto the Lantern, farm it up with the Frostlass. They are short of a Thunderbolt here. This should only be the Surf. This is going to be close. Surf does not KO with 1 HP. Frostlass hangs on, makes the Shadow Ball, KOs the Lantern, and wins switch. And switch advantage is absolutely everything here, as now the Shadow Dragonair will get crushed by TOGETIC. My opponent will fire off the Body Slam. That deals some chip damage. TOGETIC is quite bulky. It doesn't hit the hardest, but it does have some very nice bulk, so I'm able to tank that Body Slam no problem. My opponent now commits a shield, so you know what? I'm going to shield back. They're staying in here, so there's a decent chance that they may not have the greatest response to a TOGETIC with their final Pokemon, so I'm just going to double shield and look for the Fairy Wind farm down. I'm looking for the farm down. It's a Noctowl in the back, and now I can start spamming out Ancient Powers. Ancient Power is going to connect. Even though Ancient Power is super effective, Dazzling Gleam will do more here. So I'm going to full send the Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam gets no shielded, gets the Noctowl low. TOGETIC is too tanky. Opponent not going to be able to get the farm down. They're forced to throw a Sky Attack. In comes the Shadow Swampert. Swampert will be hit with a charge move here, but Swampert is at full HP. Able to tank the Shadow Ball. Mud Shot down the Noctowl, and the opponent concedes the match. The tough leads continue in the next match, Swampert into Shadow Dragonite. I save switch into Frostlass, and my opponent is going to respond with Dugong. Honestly, not a bad spot for me to be in. Frostlass can typically force shield advantage or switch advantage, and on top of that, I baited out the ice type, so TOGETIC will not have to deal with it in the end game. My opponent will go for the Drill Run. I'm able to tank that no problem, make the Shadow Ball, and now my opponent has to give up a shield if they want switch advantage. My goal here is I want either switch advantage or both of their shields. If I can get both of their shields, Shadow Dragonite, even if it's a resisted charge move, does not appreciate that damage, so that's my goal. Just get shields away from the Shadow Dragonite, as it's way easier to deal with then. Shadow Ball will be shielded. I've now gotten both shields. Frostlass trying to make it to another charge move. Opponent not going to let that happen. They go for the Icy Wind with the Dugong, and that will KO the Frostlass. Back in comes the Swampert. Swampert farming up, will be hit with energy from the Dugong. Dugong fires off the Icy Wind. That deals some solid chip damage to the Swampert. And you know what? I just want to get rid of the Dugong here, so I will go for this Hydro Cannon right away to get rid of it. In comes Toxicroak, and Togetic is about to sweep. Toxicroak farming up. I will respect the Sludge Bomb with a shield here. Opponent is going to bait with the Mud Bomb. I'm going to overfarm, wait a turn to make sure they can't catch onto the Dragonite, and go for the Dazzling Gleam. This is only neutral, but it's massive damage onto the Toxicroak. In comes the Shadow Dragonite, and Togetic, smelling blood in the water. Ancient Power KOs the Dragonite, farms down the Toxicroak, and that's a good game. The terrible leads continue in the next match. Swampert into Chestnut. I save switch into Frostlass, but being behind a turn means that I will get outpaced here. Chestnut makes the Frenzy Plant. I will respect it with a shield. Opponent baits with a superpower, and now that they have shield advantage, in comes Shadow Charizard. My team here is very weak to a Shadow Charizard with a shield advantage, so this is not very comfortable. I'm firing off the back-to-back avalanches here. This will grab my opponent's final shield. My opponent continuing to farm up with the Charizard. They have well over double Dragon Claw, so I can't afford to shield. I just have to let that through. I will get KO'd. In comes the Swampert. Swampert farming up. Will be hit with a charge move here from the Shadow Charizard. Charizard goes for the Blast Burn, rocks the Swampert, and wins CMP over the Swampert as well, adding insult to injury. I'm just going to let the Swampert go. Let's see what Togetic can do. Opponent is going to try and go for a catch onto the Chestnut. Chestnut firing off a charge move into the Togetic. Unfortunately, I believe the final Pokemon is going to be a Frostlass, and I just don't have enough energy here to get rid of the Frostlass. I try and undercharge the Dazzling Gleam. It's still going to KO. In comes the Shadow Charizard. That's going to be able to grab my final shield with the Blast Burn, and unfortunately, I can get rid of the Charizard, but one Ancient Power is not going to KO the Frostlass. Let's see, is it what I'm expecting? And it is. It's the Frostlass. Togetic gets farmed down, and that's game over. Picking up a tricky lead in the next match, Swampert into Shadow Shiny Charizard. Shadow Charizard is honestly not a comfortable matchup for Swampert as long as shields are in play. Charizard just hits incredibly hard, and if Charizard can hide behind shields, then this gets uncomfortable very quickly. My opponent has well over a Blast Burn here. I decide to call the bait. It's the Dragon Claw. I'm expecting they'll try and CMP tie, so instead I save the energy and catch the Dragon Claw onto the Togetic, where it's double resisted. I'm farming up with the Togetic, making it to the Ancient Power, but I will lose CMP to the Charizard. I will respect the Blast Burn with the shield. Opponent full sends it, and this Ancient Power should grab the final shield from my opponent. I will outpace them to the next, so I'm going to farm up 5 and wait to watch for a catch. Opponent goes for the catch, but since I waited, thankfully, I'm able to hang on to my energy, and now I can go for the Dazzling Gleam. I'm hoping that since our switch clocks are misaligned, I can snipe with the Swampert. Here, I got a little impatient. I could have just waited and then switched, but I throw the Ancient Power to stall the clock, and either way, I still do get the snipe with the Swampert. So Quagsire had so much energy, and they lose all of it, and the opponent can send back in the Charizard, but I should be 4 away from the Hydro Cannon, and 4 wing attacks do not KO. They win CMP, but I have more than 1 HP here. So I can shield, I will not get KO'd through the shield, and I can KO this Charizard, getting rid of that residual Dragon Claw, and in the back, it's a Swampert. It's a regular Swampert, so I should have this game won. An Earthquake, not going to KO. They are going to need a lot more chip damage than that. I'm going to make it to the Shadow Ball. That gets them low. Farm up 1 more, and to add insult to injury, we get the Earthquake catch onto Togetic. Togetic farms down the Swampert, and that's a good game. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Swampert into Shadow Dragonair. I'm going to save switch into Frostlass. This is not a winning matchup for Frostlass, but thankfully my opponent not only switches out, but switches into a Lantern, which is something that I really did not want my Togetic to see. Shadow Ball will connect onto the Lantern and deal quite a lot of damage. Lantern firing off the Surf. They will make it to another Surf before my Frostlass is able to get to the Shadow Ball. That is quite unfortunate. I'm just going to let this through. Surf onto the Frostlass will get the KO, and now I send in the Swampert. Swampert looking to massively overfarm here. They fire off the Surf. I should be able to throw 5 more Mud Shots and then win CMP with the Hydro Cannon as they make it to Surf number 2. I want to leave with residual energy so I can threaten an Earthquake versus the Dragonair. Dragonairs love to shield, so I'm actually going to bait here when I make it to the Earthquake. I'm expecting a shield, and then it is Togetic time. In comes Togetic. In the back, it's a Medicham. We bait out the Lantern, and Togetic is about to feast. Dazzling Gleam rocks the Medicham, and the opponent concedes the match. Hopping into the next match, picking up a neutral lead, Swampert into Sableye. Definitely happy to catch the Sableye on the lead, as that way my Frostlass will not have to face it, but the unfortunate thing is I'm not really able to pivot out and check for any steel types that may be lurking in the back. Hydro Cannon bait will be no-shielded by my opponent. They're going for the foul play, and I'm going to no-shield as well. I will make the Hydro Cannon, so this way I'm able to force either switch advantage or shield advantage. Hydro Cannon is going to be no-shielded. Down goes the Sableye. Opponent has their own Frostlass, and this is really bad. I panic switch into my own, but since switching takes a turn, I'm behind on energy in a Frostlass mirror, which is basically a death sentence. I farm up, bait with an Avalanche, and my opponent makes a very nice catch, catching the Avalanche onto Swampert. I'm going to farm up with the Frostlass, fire off the Avalanche just to either get the shield or get rid of the Swampert altogether. My opponent is putting their full faith into their Frostlass. I'm just going straight for the Avalanche here. I just need chip damage. I'm hoping my opponent no-shields it, but they shield it nevertheless. Farming up with the Frostlass, and we get the catch onto the Swampert. Let's go. It's the Shadow Ball as well. I bring back in the Frostlass. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We see a tricky lead in the next match, Swampert into Jellicent. I will stay in this matchup to start because unfortunately, my backline of Frostlass does not appreciate a Jellicent lead. I will commit an early shield here in case they full send the Shadow Ball. Opponent is going to bait with the Surf. Well, 2 can play at that game, so now it's my turn to bait as I bait with the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will be shielded. Now I can throw 1 more Mud Shot and make it to the Earthquake. This is non-lethal, but this is going to hurt. Earthquake gets the final shield from the opponent. Swampert farming up. This is a tough call to make. If they're double shielding, you know what? I'm going to double shield as well. I'm farming up with the Swampert, and I win CMP over the Jellicent. I will be able to connect with my Earthquake. Earthquake gets them low. My opponent is going to be able to KO with the Shadow Ball, but all this does is just set up farm for Frostlass. And Frostlass up energy is incredibly deadly. Frostlass now with an energy lead. Opponent has Talonflame in the back. Talonflame farming up. They try and catch an Avalanche onto their Azumarill, and I should be in a really good spot here. Of course, Togetic has Ancient Power, which will hit for double super effective damage onto that Talonflame. I'm firing off a Shadow Ball here. Shadow Ball is going to get that Azumarill low. Azu going to be forced to throw a charge move, and from here, I should be in a very comfortable spot with Togetic. Play Rough is going to KO. I can send in Togetic. Togetic farming up. I'm more than happy to tank a move here, as all I need is to get to the Ancient Power, and I should be in a pretty good spot. Togetic farming up. I'm going for the Ancient Power, and I am now 2 Fairy Winds away from the Ancient Power, so this should be game over. In comes the Talonflame, farming up and making it to the Ancient Power. Double super effective damage. Does not KO. You've got to be kidding me. Togetic, bulky, but that comes at a price. Talonflame survives, and that's a heartbreaking defeat. Tough lead in the final match, Swampert into Shadow Dragonite. I save switch into Frostlass, and my opponent is going to respond with a Lickitung. Definitely happy to see the Lickitung here, as Lickitung just can outbulk the Togetic. 2 Avalanches will be enough to KO, and the nice thing is, my opponent's Power Whip will be non-lethal here. So I can comfortably no-shield, tank the Power Whip, make the Avalanche, and this should pressure a shield from my opponent. Avalanche into the Lickitung will be shielded, and the Frostlass save switch baits out a Pokemon that my Togetic didn't want to see, and on top of that, is able to grab a shield advantage. I'm firing off the Hydro. I do not want to have to shield a move from the Lickitung. That will KO. In comes the Shadow Dragonite. I send in the Togetic, and in the back, it's a Water Gun Lantern. This is not good. Hey, at the very least, it's not Spark, but this is still going to be a very tough game. I'm able to land the Dazzling Gleam. That is step 1. My opponent getting enough fast move pressure here with the Water Guns that they can just go straight Surf in this matchup. I'm farming up to the Dazzling Gleam. I'm baiting with the Ancient Power. I'm needing my opponent to commit the shield here. Opponent calls the bait with the Lantern. Oh, that is not good whatsoever. Oh man, things are not looking good here. I'm firing off the Ancient Power. Opponent probably going to be committing the shield here. Opponent, no shields. They are trusting in the Dragonite. I farm up to the Ancient Power, and I'm going to send in the Swampert. Swampert is not in a range where a single Dragon Claw will KO. They go for the Dragon Claw. That's not going to cut it. Swampert makes the Hydro Cannon here, and this is going to hurt. Hydro Cannon is going to get the Dragonite low, and now I can send in the TOGETIC. They have a move. This is double resisted. Does the superpower KO? It does not. TOGETIC hangs on, and that's a good game. All in all, Fairy Wind is a massive upgrade for TOGETIC. Previously with Hidden Power, it had zero play whatsoever, but with Fairy Wind, it does have some nice anti-meta play into the current meta. I would say the biggest thing that's holding it back is going to be the charge moves. Ancient Power and Dazzling Gleam aren't the greatest charge moves around, so even though it has one of the best fast moves in the game, as Fairy Wind is a clone of Mudshot, the charge moves unfortunately do hold it back to a certain extent, so this is definitely a Pokemon that you can use in like an anti-meta role, but also one to keep an eye on for a potential future move update, as if it gets a better charge move, this thing could be a serious menace. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.